Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host, Peter aka LPD8 Dubuque, and this week, oh boy, am I going to get a lot of hate for this one because this topic tends to get a lot of heat going for it, and it just tends to be that way when it comes to this. I'm going to be talking about how we judge art objectively. Mostly, how people use this critique of judging art objectively and applying it to gloving, and how it's the same thing when it comes to applying it to gloving in general. It's the same way when you just apply it to art in general, where, you know, it's... Okay, there is a lot of discussion about how people can judge art objectively and how one should be critiquing art objectively and what is considered objective criticism and things like that. That's not the point that I'm trying to convey here. What I'm going to be talking about is, yes, can we judge art objectively, but I'm going to be only applying it into the context of gloving. Why just gloving? Because this is what this show is all about. It is only about gloving. Yes, I do talk about other things on this channel as a point of reference so people can understand where I come from, the things that I talk about. However, this is a gloving podcast after all, and therefore it will be its main focus. So, there's a lot of discussion that has happened over the recent years when it comes to just art in general and whether you can actually judge art objectively.
Say what?
Which, you know, spoiler warnings, you can't.
How dare you?
It's one of those things that I will certainly say that has been a point of discussion from time to time, especially in the gloving community, is whether or not you can actually judge gloving objectively or not. And I am here to tell you that your thought might be wrong if you think that you can, because art is weird and does not have a certain purpose. Well, let's just get right into it. So, first things first, we need to definitely define our terms so you guys can understand what I talk about when it comes to these certain things. First things first, when it comes to judgment in the gloving community in terms of art and gloving, is dictating whether or not a light show is quote-unquote good or bad. Then you have things like objectivity, which is, you know, simple facts based on the physical traits of the text, the piece of art, whatever the case may be. You know, a rose is red. It has red petals. That is objectivity. I am taking facts from the piece and explaining to you. That's the thing about objectivity, is basically facts. And when we get to subjectivity, it kind of boils down to opinions. It's based off of your personal perspective / opinions / feelings / whatever you want to insert here. Okay, it's one of those conversations that I would certainly say not even just the gloving community, but any art community whatsoever, whether it be writing, painting, gloving, flow art, dancing,
3 days later,
calligraphy, I don't know, you know where I'm going with this, that there's always going to be that kind of discussion of whether or not if something is objectively good or bad. Now, understanding what objectivity really means is basically you're only using the facts of the situation, the piece of art, whatever the case may be, where you're applying objectivity, the only thing you're doing is just stating out the facts. Now, if you say that these facts made you feel or think or perceive in certain ways, that is your subjectivity coming into play. Now, where does this all come into play when it comes to gloving? Oh boy, here we go. This is where it's going to get rough. Settle in, kids, we're going to get rough here. So, when it comes to gloving and how one should be judging it, not saying that in terms of a competitive sense or in a casual sense, which those are perspectives I will be covering on because it all depends on the perspective that you are in. That's how you're going to look at it. There are different lenses that we have in our community that people view gloving. Okay, and that's how they are going to perceive gloving. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody finds a different thing when it comes to gloving. And just like any art, somebody will find something deeper that is not right there on the surface, that they're extrapolating out of their feelings and opinions and perspectives. That's what art does. It's not necessarily its defined purpose. Basically, the purpose of art is uncertain. Alright, and I have plenty of references to point this stuff out, which will be referenced later in this episode. Just want to let you know right now that gloving's in the same place. Gloving's purpose is uncertain. It is, you can sit here and say it's supposed to wow and entertain and create and inspire and blah, 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 blah. Just like any art out there, it is supposed to do something. What is that something? None of us know. So, to sit here and critique somebody's light show and saying it's objectively good or bad, in this case if you're saying it's objectively bad, and then you start spouting out your thoughts on whether their finger rolls just didn't look good to you, which is, again, your opinion, or whether or not they actually are, actually doing the motions with their fingers, as in, are they fully extending all the way out like people think a finger roll should look like, We all have this thing that we all kind of agree on, which, if you don't know what that is a camp of consensus, not objectivity. God, people are going to hate me so much for this episode.
I'm going to jail!
But, yes, I will certainly say there are camps of consensus that, yes, members of the community do agree on. But here's the thing. There are multiple camps of consensus within our community. That is just a typical thing with any community fan-based thing that involves art in any fashion or in any degree. Because you can sit in here and talk about, which characters in a TV show you like more. And that's bringing up your subjectivity. And you try to use your opinions and feelings and stuff like that as a way to objectively critique it. That's not being objective at all. Now, I will certainly say, yes, people can try to sit here and judge a light show, for example, without any motion of their emotions involved. It can still be subjective, and it's just because your perspective is limited to yourself, not to everybody else. You see what I mean? Like, everyone has their own personal perspective on things. And yes, we do agree on things that we can definitely identify and share with each other, but there's still going to be these very minute, intimate details that just differ us from each other. And that's totally fine. That's one of the things that I like about art in general, is that it drives this force of discussion. It drives us to pursue something for us to understand. It drives this sense of just wonder and this motivation to achieve something. You know what I mean? Whether it is, understanding or enlightenment or whatever the case you may be, it doesn't really matter. There's something that art does that drives us to do something.
Oh yeah, you gotta get swifty.
That's great. And that's what gloving does as well. But here's the thing. Gloving is such an interesting art in itself because, like most arts, yes, there are very wide different ways of perspectives to perceive this art. But when it comes to gloving, there are, in my opinion, and based on my opinion, of my subjective thought, that there are three camps of consensus that really kind of prop up. You know what I mean? I would certainly say when it comes to these camps of consensus, it really just depends on what you're wanting to get out of gloving and what you find the purpose of gloving for you is. Okay, I know to a lot of people it's going to sound really freaking confusing and didn't make a lick of sense, but don't worry, I got you.
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here.
So, the first perspective that you need to understand when it comes to gloving and how we judge gloving as objectively as possible is that there's the competitive perspective. Now, I know a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes or really going, oh god, he's talking about competition stuff again. Yes, I'm going to keep talking about competition stuff because it exists and there's a reason why we should still be talking about it.
He needs some milk!
But there are three major things that I do keep seeing recurring amongst the members of the competitive outlet scene in the gloving community. And I'm going to call it that because that's what it is. That's what the people care about. It's the competitive element within the craft. And that's totally fine. I encourage people to be competitive when it comes to gloving because it's a driving force. But 3 major things come up. The first thing, and this is the most paramount thing I've always hear from judges, competitors, spectators, everybody when it comes to a competition setting in specific, the number one thing that people care about the most is cleanliness. And I get it, because if it looks clean, if it feels clean, if it appears clean, if it comes off clean, whatever you want to insert here in terms of cleanliness, that's the most paramount thing that the competition scene really cares about. And that makes total sense, comparing it into the state of competition. You know, the cleaner the show looks, the better it's going to look, if that makes any sense. The other thing is that a lot of people keep reiterating, especially when it comes to a competitive point, is the complexity. How complex and clean can you make these complex moves look? You see what I mean? These are things that kind of compound on each other. And of course, above all, when it comes to, especially in the competitive outlets, it needs to feel complete. It needs to look complete. That's not saying that you need to know storytelling in terms of like telling a story, but in terms of breaking storytelling down to its most basic thing of his having a beginning, middle, and end. That's their understanding of complete. You gotta make it feel complete. Like when you ended it, the person who's viewing this goes, "Wow, that actually was a very poignant ending." Like that literally made it feel like a proper ending. I've seen plenty of live shows where people are listening to it and they don't know when the song's ending and the song abruptly ends, and they just do something to end the show, and it just doesn't feel like it really tied into the show. And that's understandable if you're somebody who's never listened to that song before, or you've never really put yourself in that kind of situation. You didn't really know how to anticipate when the ending was coming because it was so abrupt. Yes, I understand that. That's totally understandable. That's one of the things that we are trying to do when it comes to learning these things within gloving. But, you know, those are the 3 major things I keep seeing as relevant motifs that keep popping up within the competitive perspective of gloving. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's how the lens you need to look at when it comes to a competitive setting, then that's how you need to use that lens, because that's what judges are looking for. That's what spectators are caring about. That is what people in the competitive outlet scene care about. Is that the objective way to judge gloving? God, no, it's so not. But that is a camp of consensus right there. The competitive perspective is a camp of consensus. Now, there's the other end of the spectrum when it comes to this terms of perspective, which is the casual perspective. You know, the part of the spectrum where I lie on, because I just love gloving and all I care about is just having fun with gloving and just enjoying myself and sharing my love for gloving. You're going to be in the same consensus as me, where it's just you're very casual about the whole thing. You know, so to us people who are in the casual camp, the things that we actually care about, or the things I just keep seeing recursive and recurring within this lovely part of the camp of consensus within the community, are things like being as artistic as possible. If your show can be, you know, it's all about that creative freedom and expression where you can be artistic and you allow your show to be what it is and just let people enjoy it. Now, you could say that in the competitive sense, but in the competitive sense, your mindset is to win, not to create art. You know what I mean? Now, this is where things start getting muddled, but I'm not going to let that get too far. But I'm just saying, yes, you can apply these things to a competitive setting. It's just that's not what most people in that competitive setting really care about, if that makes any sense. Okay? Hopefully we can agree on that. Hopefully. Anyways, artistic is one, being as artistic as possible in the casual sense. In that lens, it's what we really want. We want to see you be as artistic as possible. The other thing is that we like to see is you being as creative as possible. Now, I'm not, again, competitions, you can be creative as well. I'm just saying that these are the things that people care about the most with these particular lenses that they're viewing through. So please keep that in mind. As a casual glover, I like it when people are very creative and trying out new things, or trying out new configurations, or trying out all these different things to allow people, to allow themselves to create new things and to try out new things and not be afraid to do so. That's one of the things I noticed between the competitive and the casual is that the casuals are much more liberal in terms of just trying out new things and not caring if it looks good or not, just wanting to try it out for the sake of trying it out, as opposed to the competition setting where it's like, yeah, you can create new things and try to be creative with new things, but you ultimately need to have it be clean, be complex, and be complete. Okay, there's a lot of concepts I see people do that they don't finish all the way through, and it feels incomplete. So, the other thing when it comes to the casual perspective that is super huge to the casuals is just how expressive you are with your show. That's one of the things I like the most about gloving is that I can read and feel your expression through your show. That is the pinnacle to me. That is the zenith of my enjoyment, is that I can feel your expression. I can feel that you are expressing yourself through your show. That's what I care about. Okay. Does everybody care about that? No, and that's totally fine. If they don't care about if you're expressing yourself the way you should be expressing yourself by how you feel, then that's how they are going to view things, and that's okay. Everybody has their own way of looking at things. Now, the third camp of consensus when it comes to gloving, it's really difficult because a lot of people are going to be like, well, those can go into any of the other two camps. True, however, this is a camp that I feel like not a lot of people know about. Therefore, I want to kind of show some exposure to this. So there is a explorative aspect to gloving, okay? And the three major things that this particular perspective cares about is how innovative you're being, how pioneering you're trying to be, and how constructive can you be. Now, what do I mean by these three particular things when it comes to the explorative aspect of gloving? Well, innovative is just, finding new ways to do things and finding new methods to go about doing certain things. That's what that is, and that's totally fine. That works, right? Pioneering is literally you are pushing and you're trying to go into territories that gloving has not been into before. And there's various things that people have done in the past. One great example I can think of is abstracting, and I can't remember right off the top of my head the name of the person who does a lot of abstracting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I know I'm gonna get shot in the foot for it, but you know who I'm talking about. The idea of abstracting is something that I would consider pioneering and very innovative. It's because not a lot of people are doing that, and it's somebody who's trying to etch out how to make it work within the context of gloving, and that's totally fun. I like that idea. And pioneering, of course, is just you're pushing and trying out new things and trying to just see what else is capable of happening. It's weird as this is going to sound, I'm going to use Futuristic Lights for example. Futuristic Lights is what I consider a very pioneering company within the gloving community, is because every time they come out with a new product, they want to bring something new to the table that has never been brought to the table before in terms of gloving. Okay, that's the essence of pioneering, is that you're trying to find something to bring to the table that has never been brought to the table before. And that's great. I love that idea. It's one of my favorite things about gloving, is that people really try to pioneer these ideas. And pioneering these ideas are a fantastic way.
Wow, you can really dance. Wow, you can really dance.
Now, lastly, when it comes to constructive is literally just, instead of, saying whether something's good or bad, you're literally like, hey, that looks pretty cool. Have you thought of trying this? You're literally constructing different ways and different ideas to help each other and build each other up. That is pretty much what it comes to the explorative perspective. But I'll certainly say that's all fine and dandy, and that's all these different perspectives that we have. And if you guys remember, I had an entire episode called The Gloving Spectrum, where that's where anybody who's in the gloving community, you fall on some part on that spectrum. And it's not this binary thing where you're competitive or you're a casual glover. Those are just the two biggest parties. But you have people who are more pioneering glovers, more innovative glovers, more constructive, creative, complex, whatever. Any of these terms, you can take that as a singular point that somebody wants to have within their gloving career, and that's totally fine too. The ultimate thing I will certainly say when it comes to gloving and whether you can judge it objectively or not is no, you can't, because art cannot be judged objectively because its purpose is uncertain. And with an uncertain purpose, how can we judge something objectively with the facts when we don't have those? You see where this is going? Now, I have plenty of references that can help further my argument about whether you can judge art objectively or if art can be objectively bad. You know, Jack Saint did a wonderful video on that. Just Wright did a wonderful video. So did, Lindsay Ellis, Jeremy Johnson, Patrick H. Williams, and Jonathan Burdett. These people made wonderful videos about objectivity in art, and I highly, highly recommend you guys checking those out. That way it should help you understand where I come from when it comes to objective criticism within gloving, which you technically kind of can't have because art is subjective by nature.
I can't believe you've done this.
But yes, that is pretty much all for my episode. Oh my god, I can't believe I got to this end, and I'm pretty sure I already have like 400 comments telling me that I'm wrong and I should shut my mouth.
Watch your profanity.
Maybe. I don't know. You guys never really communicate with me online. But yes, that is it for my episode. I do appreciate it if you guys made it here all the way to the end. If you did make it here to the end, the code word is Star Fox. If you do not use it in your comment, I know you didn't get to this point. But yes, if you have any questions that I did not cover in this episode, you do have the various social media websites that you can hit me up on. First of all, you can find me on Facebook, which is under the aptly named Facebook page, The Gloving Paradigm. I try to be as responsive as much as there. I do have myself on Reddit and my email, which is muttonchopguy as my username, and muttonchopguy@gmail.com. Those are the other two places you can find me. I do have my own Discord server, which will be linked in this episode's description below. You can always hit me up there. Of course, I do have other places you can follow me on. I do have an Instagram where I post pictures of my dogs and a couple videos of light shows and stuff and what all. I try to make that a little bit more entertaining. I do have a YouTube channel, which I am still backlogging my episodes on. I'm working really, really hard on getting those episodes up there and trying to get up to speed and be up to date where I am on my episodes. That way I can actually start implementing the videos aspect to my episodes. That way you guys can see my lovely little face.
Stop it. Get some help.
Nobody wants to see my face. Why do I even bother? Anyways, yes, you have all those various things. And of course, I know you're probably going to be tired of me hearing this, but if you do like the content that I do create and you wish to help me in any way, shape, or form to do so, you can definitely consider supporting me on Patreon.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Yeah, I know, not a lot of people want to be on there, but it's okay. You do have that. As little as $1 a month goes a very long way to helping me getting closer to my first goal of making $1,000 a month, so I can do this full time and I don't have to do a day job to help supplement all this stuff. But with that being said, I have one last announcement at the end of this video or episode. Don't know why I keep saying video. I don't know why. But yes, I do have one final announcement. Now, I know I've posted this online to explain to people why I'm doing this, but I'm saying this on this episode. At the time of this recording yesterday, I finished backlogging all my stuff onto a new platform. Yes, I am moving off of Podcast Garden. I am moving onto a new platform called Anchor. If you don't know what Anchor is pretty much a 100% free podcasting hosting domain site that you're allowed to upload your episodes and host your podcast there. The reason why I moved over to this one is, one, it's 100% free. Two, distribution is 100 times easier since it does it for me. So I'm also on these other various platforms like iTunes and Google and Radio Heart and all this other stuff. Spotify, for crying out loud. I'm on Spotify now. Like, you guys can find me in all these other various places. But the other thing is that it just helped. It was much more streamlined. It allowed me to have access to my analytics, so I actually know how well I'm doing on things, because I was really in the dark for a very long time. Now, I'm not saying that Podcast Garden was a very bad site. It did what it needed to do for me. It was a place that I can call home for a while, but I will certainly say it's time for me to move on and get to another place. So I am now on Anchor. You can also find me on all the other various places as well, between Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that stuff, Spotify. I'm on all the various places. So it should be a lot easier and a lot more accessible to a lot of people to find my podcast now. If you still are having some difficulty finding it, please let me know and I will direct you to it immediately. So that is all I definitely want to thank everybody who's listened to this podcast. If it wasn't for you guys, the show wouldn't have continued on the way it has. So I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I absolutely love you guys. But I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.